Let's just start. So what if I told you there was a molecule that had recently been discovered that can help your glucose regulation? It decreases your chance of cardiovascular disease, decreases your risk of stroke, cuts your risk of Alzheimer's in half, helps you live longer, and if that wasn't enough, improves your sleep, I should say, as well as increases the enjoyment you're getting from your sex life. Is this a molecule that you would want to know more about? Perhaps and by the way, no side effects. Zero side effects. We'll talk a little bit more what this molecule might be if it does in fact exist. We've talked about, and you've heard about the power of the mind for a really long time. I like to go into the scientific literature to see if the mind is really powerful, perhaps over our physiology, and the whole purpose of this conference is, can the power of the mind, can what we think and believe actually improve our longevity? Back at the turn of the century, the great psychologist William James said, there is a law in psychology that if you form a picture in your mind of what you'd like to be, and you keep and hold that picture in your mind long enough, you will soon become exactly as you've been thinking. So I wanted to take a look at the scientific literature about this topic and see what it actually says. So this first paper took 30 male undergrad athletes, and they split them up into 3 different groups of 10. And what they did was they had them each do a hip flexor exercise just once to see how strong they were. They were measuring their strength in that particular exercise. They split them up in 3 groups, and the first group acted as the control group. For 2 weeks, they didn't do anything. The second group was told to come in 5 days a week for 15 minutes to perform that same exercise for 4 sets of 8 repetitions with 60 seconds of rest in between. So far, so good? The third group was told for 2 weeks to visualize yourself doing the exercise 5 days a week for 15 minutes each, 4 sets of 8 repetitions with 60-second rest intervals, but just imagining it. You guys follow the study? What do you think happened? The control group, they did nothing for 2 weeks. They didn't get any stronger. The group that actually performed the exercise got 28% stronger, and look at the percentage of strength increase in the people that just visualized it. That'd be like, my bicep is getting huge right now. Right? Just my right one. Okay? 24 versus 28% increase in strength, just visualizing it. Okay? In this paper, really great paper, they took 84 hotel maids, the women that clean the rooms. And what they did is they split them into 2. One group acted as the control group, and the other group, they told that the exercise that they're getting while at work was enough to achieve what was called the Surgeon General in the U.S., the Surgeon General's recommendations for exercise. They said that what you do at work, and here we'll give you some examples. When you're vacuuming, you're doing some exercise. When you're picking up loads of laundry, you're doing some exercise. All that is enough for you to be healthy. At the beginning of the study, they measured things like blood pressure, body fat percentage, BMI, waist to hip ratio. And guess what happened? Over the course of 4 weeks, what changed in the women that were told that what they were doing was enough? Nothing. They kept doing their job just as they had been doing it before, but believed what they were doing was actually going to make them healthy, and guess what happened? In that group, they saw a decrease in weight, blood pressure, body fat, waist to hip ratio, as well as BMI. Just by what? Just by believing, by thinking, by being told, you know, what you're doing is enough. And they had a significant decrease in these things. And this is one of a few papers. Whoops. There's this, condition called functional hypothalamic amenorrhea. What that means in English is that these women are not having a menstrual cycle, and it's because of some hormonal imbalance. Okay, the hypothalamus is involved. What they did in this particular paper is they took 16 women with this functional hypothalamic amenorrhea. They weren't having any menstrual cycle, and they split them into 2 groups of 8. One of the groups served as the control group. The other group of 8 received something called cognitive behavioral therapy. Have you guys heard of that before? Really well studied. It's a psychological, technique, if you will, that the name sort of suggests it's trying to get a change in behavior, but by using logic and reasoning. And what they did with this cognitive behavioral therapy with these 8 women was for 20 weeks, all they did was cognitive behavioral therapy to try to change their attitudes about their condition. Okay? And guess what happened? You guys follow that? What supplements did I say that they took? No. How about exercise? Nope. How about sleep? Nope. Medication? Nope. You guys follow that? All they did was for 20 weeks was the therapist tried to change their attitude about their condition. In the in the group, this was of 8 women, 6 women over 20 weeks resumed their menstrual cycle. 1 partially did, and then 1 didn't at all. Now compare that to the control group. 6 of those women didn't have any change at all. Remember, they didn't go through the therapy. 1 had a resolution and 1 had partial. That's pretty significant. Do you hear what I just said? These women had been suffering with a lack of a menstrual cycle because of some hormonal issues. They just talked to someone for a little while, helped them change their attitude, and what happened? They resumed their menstrual cycle. Now, that's a small cohort. There's only 16 people, but that's pretty significant findings. And here's an example of a woman that was in the cognitive behavioral therapy group, and this is an example of the hormones in a woman in the control group. Look what happened. So they measured estrogen and progesterone prior to treatment. You can see that they both have about the same, both very low levels of these sex hormones. Now what happens is over the course, and here's 20 weeks, so that's when the cognitive behavioral therapy ended, the hormones started to change somewhat, but notice at 20 weeks, that's when the therapy ended, and look what happened to her hormones afterwards. They continued to improve and get better. Versus in the control, what happened to her hormones? So wait, you're telling me that just by talking to somebody and changing my attitudes about my condition, I can change my hormones? Does that make sense? You don't have to pull your pants down like Ben Greenfield and try to put light on your area. Try to increase your testosterone. Maybe you can just think about it. Oh yeah, thanks for having me in Finland, by the way. No, I'm just kidding. They went on to say, this was so striking, it was a small cohort, but they said, why not try this instead of they called the pitfalls of medications that have side effects? You guys follow that? So what we've been looking at is kind of mind over matter. I want to continue to look at this topic because I'm fascinated. It's cool to talk about the power of belief and manifestation, and most people do it like in a parking lot, right? Like I can picture myself getting the perfect parking spot in front of the conference center. But if we think a certain way and hormones change, you guys follow that? That's significant. We're not even talking about longevity yet. So this particular paper, I love this one. So here's what these researchers did is they whipped up this vanilla milkshake. It was 380 calories. And what they did was they took 46 individuals, brought them in on 2 separate occasions. There was no control in this. And they made up 2 labels for this same milkshake, 380 calorie milkshake. Take a look at this one. It's called Sensi Shake. It has according to the label, 140 calories. It has 0 fat, no added sugar. The first ingredient is non-fat yogurt, and you can probably read a little bit about it here. It says, oh, it tastes so good, and it's going to make you feel good, and you might lose weight on this. Okay? That was a 380 calorie shake. The other one, look at it. It's called Indulgence. Look at the first ingredient. Vanilla ice cream. Tons of fat, tons of carbs, over 600 calories. But what's the caveat to this paper? What was in each can? The same shake. You guys follow that? So what they did was they said, okay, group of 46 people, come in, and we're gonna measure a hormone called ghrelin. Ghrelin is produced by the stomach. It's a hunger hormone. The higher it is, the more hungry you are. The lower it is, the more satisfied or satiated you are. They also, so what they did is they brought them in. This is an oddity to this part. They had them look at the can and really evaluate it for about 40 minutes, which just seems like a long time to stare at a can. But I think that they were waiting to see if there was a hormonal change. So they said, okay, you're gonna taste this shake today, and I'm gonna take your blood, and I want you to tell me how you feel after you drink it. Okay? So they looked at it for 40 minutes, and then afterwards, what do you think they said in terms of their satiety when they drank that shake? And it was good, but I'm still kind of hungry. Okay? They brought him in 2 weeks later, and they had him do the same thing with the Indulgence shake. Just take a look at it, good hard look at it, read all the ingredients, read the macronutrients, tell us what you think, try it, and then tell us what you think. And what do you think they said after that one? Oh, that was fantastic. I am so full. But you guys, what's the caveat to this, man? It was the same shake in both ones. You guys understand that? There's no difference. But here's what I liked about this study. That's fine, and that's not surprising, to be quite honest. But what they measured was ghrelin. And what they found is that here's the Sensi shake, and the darker line is the indulgent shake. Here's ghrelin at baseline. And these were the same people, so they had the same level of ghrelin when they came in on both occasions. When they looked at the Sensi shake, what did their ghrelin do? Which is also not surprising. They were looking at it, they're like, man, that does not make me hungry at all. Their ghrelin just kind of stayed around the same. You guys follow that? And then they drank it, and what happened? It didn't really do much for them. Versus the indulgence shake, what did they do? They stared at this thing for 40 minutes. Mouth salivating, like, oh my God, I cannot wait to drink this. Right? And what happened? Their ghrelin shot up. I am so hungry looking at this thing. And then what happened to their ghrelin when they drank it? Their body's like, oh, thank you. I've been waiting for that. You guys follow that? But here's my point. So to look at a label and think that something's healthy or unhealthy, yeah, that can define whether you think that it made you full or not. But you guys, a hormone changed. A hormone changed just by evaluating this label. Their body said, awesome, I'm full, I'm done, on the same 380 calorie shake that previously they said, I want more. Does that have any physiological ramifications? Or are you supposed to go exercise? Oh, God, I have to. I hate exercise. Versus someone else that looks at a watercress salad and is like, I cannot wait to eat this. This is so nourishing. It's so good. And it's a question that I have, quite honestly, but can somebody look at an unhealthy food and think that it's healthy and it has a different response? I'm not suggesting that it does, but this opens up a lot of doors, if that makes sense. Man, that Twinkie. No. So this is a really great study as well. So here's what this paper did. We're looking at mind over physiology. So this paper took type 2 diabetics, and they split them up into 3 groups, and basically what they did is they asked them to go inside of a room and play a video game for the allotted amount of time. In reality, each type 2 diabetic group was in there playing a video game for 90 minutes, every single one. They were told not to bring any time devices in with them because they had a clock next to the computer that in each of the different rooms told either the right time or the wrong time. And they also told, which was smart, they told these participants, change the game you're playing every 15 minutes, so they're really cognizant of the time. You guys follow that so far? So in the first room, when the diabetics went in and were asked to play the video games, the clock was slow. Now, in reality, they were in there for 90 minutes for the study purposes, but the clock showed that they were only in there for 45. You guys follow that? So they switched the times they were playing the game 3 times every 50. So they believed that they were in there for 45 minutes. The second group, they were in there for 90 minutes, and the clock suggested that they were there for 90 minutes. And the third group, the clock was fast. They were in there for 90 minutes, but the clock said that they were in there for 180 minutes. You guys follow that so far? Then what they did is they asked them how stressed out they were and a whole bunch of different things, but they measured their glucose. Now, these were type 2 diabetics. You guys have any idea what they found? You think that the time that they perceived it to be could change their blood glucose? Wait a minute. I thought we had to use diet and exercise and some fancy supplements and maybe some medications to alter glucose levels. What they found was in the group that thought they were only in there for 45 minutes had the lowest blood sugar. These are type 2 diabetics. The control group that was in there for 90 minutes and thought they were in there for 90 minutes had slightly higher. And look at the fast group. They were okay, let's put it this way. Each one of these groups was in there for 90 minutes. 90 minutes had passed from the baseline glucose to this glucose. You guys follow that? So what's the implications of this? And they even said it. That what we believe, our perception of a thing, can actually change. And this is not finding a parking place. This is changing a biomarker that's found inside the body. Are you guys kind of amazed by this? I may not seem like it. I'm a really low-key person. This is true, very introverted. Like, I love my family. That's kind of what my whole life's about. I can get really excited about things. And I'm here because you guys, this is how I work. I read this stuff, and I'm like, people have to know this. We have to get this out there in some way. Okay, so, sorry if I get too excited. So, now let's take a look. We're still going to talk about longevity, but let's talk about disposition. Does somebody's attitude about the future and if good or bad things happen, does that possibly affect anything? Now, you've probably heard about telomeres, yes? Telomeres are supposedly these end caps on chromosomes or DNA that protect it from damage. And the longer the telomere length is associated with youth and sort of anti-aging. The shorter one's telomeres is associated with aging and disease. And part of the reason why, and I think this is a good graphic, is the longer the telomeres, the more cell divisions that can take place, and that's youth. If we cut ourselves and we can replace those skin cells faster, that's very youthful. I have 5 children under the age of 9, which is why I have bags under my eyes, incredibly sleep deprived. I don't know where Dr. Pondo went. Because he's like, who's sleep deprived? Sometimes I fall asleep just lecturing, so if I do, just throw something at me. What was I saying? See? No, really. It had to do with cell division. And my kid will get a cut, and they'll go to bed at night, and they'll wake up the next day, and it's not there. I'm like, where the heck did that go? You had a laceration on your hand. That's because of the telomere. Their cell division and replication can take place so quickly. And as we age, it's said that doesn't happen as much. Well, because of this telomere influence, you can see that people relate it to a shoestring, that this would be, say, for example, an intact and long telomere, and here's frayed telomeres. The thought goes we want the intact ones. Because of this, there's no shortage of supplements that is available nowadays to help increase your longevity, increase your telomere length, right? All for a price, all for a cost. And what's the studies on any one of these things? Probably not a lot. However, it turns out that in this particular study, they took postmenopausal women, and they evaluated them for their relative pessimism or optimism. And here's what was great. They looked at their telomere length, as well as this, what's considered to be a pro-inflammatory marker, a cytokine, interleukin-6. And what they found was, not surprisingly, that the more pessimistic somebody was associated with a shorter telomere length and higher inflammation via interleukin-6. Now, a question I have is, if they're pissed because they had short telomeres and somehow their body knew that. Like, oh, I don't have that long to live. But is it possible that their disposition towards pessimism, towards negativity, and less positivity was associated with increased aging, increased diseases of aging? But I will point out what's interesting is that they didn't find that optimism was associated with longer telomeres. It was only pessimism with shorter telomeres. So I guess the take home of this is just don't be angry and mad. Now look at the title of this one, because now we're finally going to start talking about longevity. Optimism and cause-specific mortality, a prospective cohort study. So this looked at the nurses' health study. It was a prospective study, and so about 70,000 people were involved in this data. So this is a lot better than that 16 female cohort that we just looked at. And basically what they did is they rated, it was 2004, they rated these 70,000 individuals on what was called dispositional optimism, which was thinking that good things were going to happen in the future. They waited a couple of years, and then they looked at all-cause mortality and cause-specific mortality from 2006 into 2012. So far, so good? And here's what they found. In terms of the population in this upper quartile that was the highest optimism, they tended to have lower cholesterol. This is before they looked at their cause of death. Lower cholesterol, lower incidence of hypertension, lower incidence of type 2 diabetes, lower incidence of heart attacks, of stroke, of cancer, and of depression. That's who was in the group. Now, in terms of looking at all-cause mortality, check this out. With the hazard ratio, they used the lowest, most pessimistic, if you will, the lowest optimism down here. And so here were the happiest women. And what they found was that there was a statistically significant decreased risk of dying from anything or specific causes, including heart disease, stroke, respiratory disease, infection, and total cancer. Okay? And what was the title of the study? I can't see it anymore. Yeah, optimism and cause-specific mortality. And what they found was the more optimistic the individual 70,000 people were, the less likely they were to die of any cause or just of specific causes as well. What was really interesting is that they had the more positive somebody was, the less likely at risk they were for infection. And that's interesting because other studies have showed a better immune response to vaccinations in happier people. So there's definitely a disposition, optimism, correlation between that and the immune system. They went on to say, too, in a few of these studies, which I love, guess what didn't matter? Because you could say, okay, well, they're nurses. Maybe they have a good paycheck. I'm jobless, almost homeless, so I have nothing to be happy about. Didn't matter. Socioeconomic status didn't change anything. Even looking at their depression levels, that didn't necessarily change anything either. Okay? So that's disposition. Now let's take a look at some papers that are looking at our perception. Our perception perhaps of ourself, our perception of our own health. And I would imagine that, I don't know this for a fact, I haven't talked to too many of you, that you're here at this longevity conference, I'm going to guess for one of two reasons. One is you're excited about aging and you want to find out good ways of doing it. The other one is frightened of aging and want to find out good ways of improving that. Does that make sense? But would you say that that's a difference in perception about aging? Seeing aging as a good thing and a happy thing. I mean, I'll be honest, I have more wrinkles, I'm fatter than I've ever been, less hair, but I love it. You guys know you grunt sometimes when you get up, you're like, oh, I've started doing that. And I've embraced that. I'm letting people know that I'm getting up or sitting down. So anyways, but there's healthy attitudes about aging and there's unhealthy attitudes about aging. So in this particular paper now notice the first term, it's called self-related or self-rated health. This is really interesting. There's a number of papers on this. This one's a little bit older, 1997. And what they did was, it was sort of a systematic review. They looked at 27 other studies that related to this self-rated health. Okay, so they didn't do it themselves. They looked at all these other ones. And what they found is that one's own self-rating of your health is incredibly complex. Now think about it. Let's say someone has arthritis versus like sinusitis. That arthritis is painful. It hurts. And so you might rate your health more poorly because it hurts so badly, versus sinusitis is just more of a nuisance. You guys follow that? Or maybe it has to do with your social surroundings. I can feel particularly happy or good looking depending on my surroundings of the people that I'm around. Does that make sense? For example, who goes on Facebook nowadays and see these lovely lives that everybody's apparently living and this wonderful food that people are eating for every single meal, and then looks at theirs and like, wow, I suck, right? So, but what this paper found, and remember, it was a review of 27 other papers. What they found is that, and this is amazing, the single question on a scale of 1 to 5, in general, how would you rate your health, was an independent predictor of mortality, more so than objective data. What does that mean? More than what the lab tests might suggest. You guys follow that? That somebody, and remember, we're talking about perception right now. Somebody's perceived health was a stronger independent risk factor for mortality more than objective factors or variables. Now, this was done in 1997, and this is just, I don't like to talk about myself too much, but I can tell you that most of my patients today, I really wonder, we have access to blogs and podcasts and articles and so much information nowadays, and Facebook, like I said, that I have all these patients that don't think that they're healthy. But they have a stack of labs this big, having gone to multiple practitioners, and there's some people, I can't run more labs. They've run them all, and they can't find out what's wrong with them. I seriously wonder if we are falsely rating our health because we're listening to these podcasts and we're reading, not saying they're a bad thing, Chris, reading blogs and looking at other people that think that they might be healthy, and they have a false sense of what health is. And if they really went inside and say, well, how healthy do you really feel? Maybe it's not health, maybe it's happiness. Maybe they're not happy. And they think that if they had more energy, then that would bring them happiness. So, small caveat to that. This paper, longevity increased by what's called the positive self-perception of aging. This is just what I was talking about, and here was basically this study. This study looked at people and evaluated whether they saw aging as good or aging as bad. And guess what they found? That over the course of the 23 years after following up with them, that people that had a positive self-perception of aging had a chance of living 7.5 years longer, or lived 7.5 years longer. What supplement did they take? Right. No supplement. Okay? and look for the other variables that they eliminated. It didn't, you guys, this is so important. Help me out. It's been a long day. What is this one? What are they evaluating? Not how happy somebody is, how they view aging. Okay, and notice in the black portion here, what doesn't matter? Their age, their socioeconomic status, their gender, but also notice down here, loneliness and functional health. What is it in English? That means if you have you can be lonely and old and kind of sick, but if you have a positive outlook on aging, then you have a chance of living longer. And what's this conference about? Right? Now listen, there's some really cool stuff on diet and exercise, guys. There's a lot of amazing stuff on this, but this is a piece that I don't think we give enough attention to. So far, what have we looked at? How did we start out? And we're getting stronger. We can get stronger just by thinking about it. We can change our glucose levels and hormones just by thinking about it. People that are pessimistic seem to have shorter telomeres. People that are optimistic tend to live longer. People that have a health... You guys follow? Now, just for a second, and I'm not finished yet, have you guys gone inside your own head for a second and be like, what is my views of aging and my own self-related health and whether I'm optimistic or not? Have you guys done that? And one thing that I really want for you, and I was thinking about this beforehand, I want you guys today, at some point, to do a really strong self-inventory. Because the studies are pretty clear on these, and of course we're not done yet. This was from that same paper, and you can see that a higher positive self-perception of aging was an increased longevity over the course of the 23 years that they did this study. They went on to say the same thing. Didn't matter what gender you were, how old you were, what your socioeconomic status was, what your education was, or anything else, that even functional health and loneliness. So remember that molecule? I'm gonna take a sip of water. You guys think about what this is. What did I say that this did? Improved glucose regulation. Here's the deal. People sleep better with this. Okay? They have less sleep disturbances. So while the discussion earlier about trying to get people to sleep more, it's valid. How about sleep better? This helps you sleep better. This decreases your chance of cardiovascular disease, stroke, and Alzheimer's, and of course the biggest one, it doesn't make you have more sex, but you enjoy the sex that you're having more. Okay? Which is important. I can't help you if you're not having a lot. What is this? The question is will this help you live longer? It's purpose. And there's papers on this, you guys. So one thing that I modified this definition a bit, because I want you to think about this. I think it's something to contemplate, is the reason for which something is done or created. And I said, well, how about you were created? Like, why are you here? And you could say, well, my mom and dad liked each other and they got together one night and here I am. Maybe. But might there be what is your purpose? And down here it says, for which something exists. How about for which you exist? Why are you here? Not here. But what are you doing here? Okay? So are there papers on this? I'm very curious about this. I already mentioned this before, but there's plenty of papers that show that purpose in diabetics decreased their A1C versus people that didn't have a purpose. It decreases cardiovascular risk by 72% and stroke by 22%, Alzheimer risk in half. People do sleep better with less sleep disturbances, and it turns out that having a purpose might actually make you live longer. So a couple more studies and we'll wrap this up. Purpose in life is a predictor of mortality across adulthood. I like that title. Just go ahead and read the red parts here. Purposeful individuals, people that had a purpose, lived longer than their counterparts during the 14 years after assessment, and it appears to buffer against mortality across the adult years. Let me just look at something. What they found in this paper was there was a 7-point scale on how much purpose somebody had. The higher the number, the more purpose they had. With every point that somebody went up, they had a 12% decreased risk of dying of something. I'll say that again. They evaluated people on the 7-point scale of purpose. The higher the number, the higher the purpose. And they found that the higher the scale somebody was on this purpose scale, for every point they went up, they had a 12% decreased risk chance of dying of something. This one here, purposeful, and most of these studies are pretty recent. This is 2016. The title is great. Purposeful Engagement, Healthy Aging and the Brain. Where do you think we're going with this? Tony, is this a little bit exciting? No? All right. Well, I'm glad that I came excited. I was about to tell you to touch your neighbor and tell them that I need a purpose. Do it. Tell them, I need to find my purpose. Here's what they did. Same thing. You know where this is going. People that had purposeful life engagement, they had a purpose in life. Read this. Extended longevity, reduced risk for various diseases, reduced physiological dysregulation, hormone imbalances, and had less inflammation because of genetic reasons. Now, this study is going to talk about another term that I have to tell you a slightly different story about. So there's two ways of attaining well-being or searching for well-being. One is called hedonic. Did you talk about this last year, Tommy? Hedonic and eudaimonic. Hedonic, if you look up here, hedonic is me-centered. That I am trying to avoid pain, seek pleasure. Where you look at eudaimonic in the green, look at some of the characteristics. Self-acceptance. They have positive social relationships. They feel in control of their surroundings. They're involved in personal growth, environmental mastery, autonomy, and personal expression. So to compare the two of these things, a hedonic individual is, I said, seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. A eudaimonic individual, you guys, is seeking for things for the higher purpose, for the higher good. That makes them happy. You guys follow that? What makes a hedonic person happy is me, whatever makes me happy. A eudaimonic person, what makes them happy? What do you think? Help me out. It's a long day. Someone else's pleasure, someone else's good. Does that make sense? Hedonic people seek fun and enjoyment. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's hedonic. Eudaimonic seeks skills and insights. You guys see the difference between the two? Okay? So this paper then, in a moment, went on to say, I'll show you. I'll just leave it here. There's this thing called the Hedonic Treadmill. And this Hedonic Treadmill, tell me if you can relate. I know that in America, most people there can relate. When you go to school early on, which is public early, you need to get good grades. Why do you get good grades in the U.S.? So you can get into a good college, because if you get into a good college, then what does that secure for you? A good job. And if you have a good job, then what do you make a lot of? Money. And if you make a lot of money, then you're probably going to be sexy to somebody. And then you feel and you're in a relationship, and that makes you happy. And then what? Well, I'm not happy yet. I want to get married, and when we get married, we need a house. And that's not enough, so I'm going to get a car. And then my job's not enough, so then I'm going to get a promotion. And I need more money because I've been spending all of it, and you don't make me happy anymore, so I'm going to have an affair. You guys follow that? Okay, the next thing looks really good, and then you get it, and then it's not enough. Or you lose it. That's not happiness. You guys follow that? Eudaimonic well-being is being happy with what you got. A little bit bald, a little bit wrinkly, a little bit fat, great kids. You could take my car, and I'd be like, well, I hope they enjoy it better than I did. Does that make sense? That's being you can have stuff taken away, and it doesn't impact you the way it does someone else. So the study went on. The same one said that this eudaimonic well-being, which is, there's a rating scale for this, is what helped, they thought, increase longevity, increased health, increased the happiness of the years that they had. And notice the same thing. It doesn't matter the income or the age or the gender or the race or how healthy they were, believe it or not, if they smoke or not, what their exercise habits were or other health habits. What did I just say? Crazy Americans talking too fast. Did you guys follow that? Feeling positive about yourself, rating yourself well, being optimistic about things, having a positive perception of aging, and living a life with purpose for other people. Listen, there's a lot of cool studies on diet and exercise and a variety of different supplements. But when I was given this opportunity, and thank you for this, the opportunity to present here, I thought to myself, what is the best thing that I could try to send people away with that will give them the biggest chance for having a happy, healthy, productive life? Does that make sense? And I think that this, for starters, trumps everything else. Because I'll say this, if you have a purpose, do you eat bad food? If you have a purpose, do you think that promotes healthy behaviors? So instead of forcing these behaviors on people that really don't want to do it because they're not happy, how about focusing on this, and then the behaviors probably fall in line? So, what do you do if you don't have, you might be thinking, well, I don't know what my purpose is. A couple things that I think can be helpful is doing a personal inventory on a scale of 1 to 5. How would you rate this statement? I know and have discovered who I am. Scale of 1 to 5. And just be honest with yourself. You guys want me to be honest with you? Life's too short to be anything but transparent. I didn't figure out who I was until about a year ago. No, really. This is the God's. I'm 75 now. I don't know if you can tell. It's a lot of glutathione. No. Honest to God, life-changing experience. Get dragged through the dirt and you figure out a lot of things. If that makes sense. So a year ago, couldn't have answered that question. Or other questions. On a scale of 1 to 5, I can clearly, succinctly, and articulately state my life purpose. Which means in 10 seconds, you turn to the person and you tell them what your purpose is. Can you do that or not? If not, then perhaps you might want to take a look at maybe discovering what your purpose is. Do you have, on a scale of 1 to 5, a core set of belief systems that helps dictate your life? Or other questions are, here's a good one, I find intense enjoyment and fulfillment in what I do every day. Okay? If you answer more on the 5 scale on those things, then you're probably doing pretty well. And listen, I'm being very serious about this. Most people don't, at least in the U.S., have a purpose. And by purpose, I mean you guys are sleeping. It's 2 a.m. Someone smacks you. It's like, what's your purpose? Most people in America be like, what's wrong with you? My purpose is to get back to sleep. But when I say purpose, it's not something light and fluffy. I mean, it's a purpose where somebody woke you up in the middle of the night, you would have an answer for them. Do you guys understand what I mean by a purpose? Okay? So a couple ways of going about this. One is, how do you want to be remembered? Now, most people are at this conference perhaps because they're trying to avoid this. But you don't understand that the ancient philosophers contemplated death on a daily basis. Because when you contemplate your death, can you only really live? And most people are afraid of death. But how do you want to be remembered? What do you want people to say about you? Does that make sense? This is a way of trying to figure out your purpose. Another way is give. Think of others except for yourself. I was thinking about this beforehand. Depending on one's spiritual proclivities, a lot of people meditate for themselves or pray for themselves. Like, for example, I could have been like, dear God, please let the right words come out of my mouth while I go up there today and not be too nervous. Okay? And it's subtle, but what if, while I was over there, I was like, dear Lord, please help the attendees here today get the information that they need in order to live happier and healthier and more successful lives. You guys see the difference? How much work was that? And in meditation, we talk about going inwards, and insight's really good. But how about instead of going inwards, maybe going outwards and not meditating on yourself and not praying for yourself? How about being charitable, giving? And when people hear that, they think of money. But maybe you don't have to give money. Maybe you can give time. And don't wait until you're retired, until you have more time. Maybe there's something you can do today. How about random acts of kindness? These are all other-centered activities. I'll give you an example of charity. I told you I have 5 kids under the age of 9. I'll be out with a story, and I swear to you, the number of times in my life I've heard, wow, it looks like you have your hands full. But what do they do after that? This is depressing. Well, it looks like you have your hands. I've got my screaming kid. They're snotting on my shoulder. They're fighting over in the clothes section. Looks like you have your hands full. What do you think would be next? What can I help you with? But what do they always do? Looks like you have your hands full. Really? Then don't even say that, man. That's charity. Charity is, hey, it looks like you're having a hard time with it. What can I do to help? You guys understand that? So by thinking of others, that can help lead to a more eudaimonic, purpose-driven life. So what have we learned about? Give me a couple takeaways if you guys don't mind. What stood out for you? Just take 30 seconds. Anything. Thank you from the back, optimism. And did you hear how optimistic he was when he said that? No, optimism. What else? Anything stand out? And it doesn't have to. That's fine. We just met. Power of the mind. Thank you. Purpose. I love purpose. Yes. And there's more studies on this. I tried to keep this short. Anything else stand out for you guys? Joy. I like that one. Good. Good. I hope you guys got something out about this and the power of the mind. I'm going to finish with a quick story. There was a patient that got a call from the doctor, and the doctor said, listen, you got to come down to the office when you get a chance. So the patient did. He sat down in front of the doctor, and the doctor said, well, I have some bad news and some really bad news. Which one do you want first? And the patient's like, well, neither sound good, but I guess give me the bad news. And the doctor said, well, the bad news is we got your test results, and it shows that you only have 24 hours to live. The patient was like, well, wait a minute. That's pretty bad. What's the really bad news? And the doctor said, the really bad news is we got your results yesterday. And the reality is that we may live to be 100, but the truth is, and I think you guys know this, we also might die tomorrow. Statistically, if you've made it this far, we're probably still going to be here tomorrow. But one day, our next moment is going to be our last, and none of us know when that's going to be. So in terms of finding your purpose, in terms of, and Ben talked about this too, if you guys love someone, why wait till the last minute? Why not tell them today? And not only tell them that today, but tell them why you think they're great, how they've improved your life, you guys understand that? When's the last time someone told you that? Okay, it means a lot. And I believe that in being charitable, in doing random acts of kindness, in living a eudaimonic life with optimism and healthy perception of yourself and your health and of aging, that you'll live longer, but if you tell other people how you feel about them, you'll be helping them live longer as well. Okay, thank you.